Hey everybody, John Malanka here, United Patients Group, and my latest guest is a gentleman by the name of Bruce Eckfield, and you can find him online at eckfield.com, but his organization is called Eckfield and Associates. And Bruce's journey was cannabis patients and using his entrepreneurial skills and what he's doing today. He's an entrepreneur, he's Inc. 500 CEO, as well as a business coach. And so what he does, he helps patients who want to get in this industry, but also businesses who are, I guess, struggling of what to do next. But he's helping keeping the wheels on the bus through his master classes, one-on-one coaching, as well as his podcast. Very knowledgeable guy. I really enjoyed having you on the show, Bruce. So thank you. For our audience, I hope you enjoy this as much as I did and we did doing this. But if you haven't signed up or subscribed to our channel, please do. It does help get our information out there. So like us, write comments, and enjoy. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody, welcome back. This is John Malanka with the United Patient Group. Be informed and be well. And today's guest, we have a gentleman from the East Coast, New York City, to be exact, Bruce Eckfield of Eckfield and Associates. Great to have you on. I appreciate you joining me on this, I guess, Monday morning, huh?
Yeah, thanks.
Monday afternoon for you. And so, Bruce, let me give you a little background. After being trained as an architect, Bruce spent many years in the digital product design and service, and he founded a technology consulting firm in 2003. His company was an Inc. 5000 honoree. Congratulations. 5 years in a row and ranked 241st in 2009. He sold his business in 2013 and is now a strategic coach and advisor to early stage CEOs. Hopefully I'll be in there with you, and their leadership team. He hosts 2 podcasts, Scaling Up Services and Thinking Outside the Bud, and writes weekly for Inc.com and on leadership as well as strategic business growth. So thanks for being on the show, Bruce.
Oh, thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it.
Thanks. It's funny how people jump in this industry. We're in one industry and we kind of morph into that. And I remember being, right out of college, and I remember talking to my dad, and most people look up to their dads as like their heroes, and like, how did you get here? How did you become a father and a spouse and supporting the family? And, in my mind, no worries. I mean, most kids, you're looking like, oh, we don't have any worries. And so I always used to ask them, how do I know what we want to do, Dad? How do you know what you want to do? And if most, not everyone knows what they want to do. And so you kind of morph, and he says, you'll know. It'll just kind of just flow into what you're doing, have a passion of what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And so it sounds like you've done this and you've done this well. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad it appears that way.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Yeah. I think people don't, and on that point, I always tell people, don't always judge a book by its cover, because everybody's going through something. So, and this is something I work with patients on a daily basis. Yeah. And so don't always assume. And I had an old colleague years ago, I would run a sales team, and it drove me nuts when anyone was late. And I always tell everybody, it's better to be 5 minutes early than 1 minute late. And she said, John, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know if they're single moms, single dads, taking the bus, no money, running the kids to school. I went, her name was Esther, and Esther actually passed away from cancer when we worked together. And that really hit home. So it just showed, but she stuck with me, 20 years later of that too. And so on the outside, you look fantastic, man. So
well, I'm very fortunate, and I've had a lot of great success in my life. So I'm grateful for that.
Awesome.
But yeah, look, it's always challenges, right? I think that's life, that's business. And, and you're going to have that. A successful life is not one that's easy.
No,
one that is interesting and achieves things.
And I think learning, you and I have spoken off camera, losing my wife to cancer a few years ago. People always say, I'm so proud of you for continuing on or doing this. And I just, I don't want to say adversity makes you stronger. And believe me, I wouldn't wish this upon anybody. And I would do it all over again, knowing what the outcome was, just because of the life that Crit and I had. And so cannabis wasn't, you very similar background, athlete, and cannabis wasn't your lifestyle. And so can you share how you became a patient and then kind of took your expertise and life experiences and what you're doing today?
Yeah. Yeah. I was a pretty intense athlete, student in high school, college. Never really got into it. I had friends and stuff were into it, high school, but never part of my kind of sphere. College, I was a competitive rower. I was a cross country skier. I was a biathlete for a while.
Oh, wow.
So I was really into those things, and not that that didn't jive with use of cannabis necessarily, but it wasn't part of my world. Even, I went to McGill University in Montreal, fairly strong cannabis culture in Montreal. Certainly exposed to it, but just never really a big part of my life. And then about 9 years ago, ended up with a fractured vertebrae. My L5 vertebrae fractured, ended up having a fairly major double fusion surgery. 12 hours. They got me out of there. They handed me this big bottle of Percocet. And a friend of mine was just like, hey, you should try pot. And I was certainly open to it. I didn't have any, it wasn't like, oh no, I can't try pot, but I never really thought about it. And I certainly never had thought about it as a therapeutic. And so I was like, hey, I'll give it a go. Right. Like I certainly knew the downsides of, the opioids and Percocet and had done surgeries and stuff before and knew that kind of zone that it puts you in. And so when that was offered to me and suggested, I was like, yeah, I'll give that a try. And probably within a week, 2 weeks, certainly within 2 weeks, I was off all the Percocets. I was mainly doing edible. I was still doing a little bit of smoking, but mainly edibles. And it was great for pain management. It really helped get through kind of that constant pain post-surgery recovery. It kept my mood really good. Right. Like I just, it helped me just not sort of succumb to, I think, the sort of the emotional draining aspect of I couldn't bend, lift, or twist. Right. Like I don't know how graphic you want to be on this program, but right. There were certain things I couldn't do myself that I had other people do for me, which was, not fun. And that just kept my mood very good. And then my sleep was amazing. Right. I just found that my ability to actually get really good sleep was improved. And even post surgery recovery, I found that it was very, very helpful for sleep, dealing with a fairly active, driven mind, right? That's got 1,000 things going on a regular basis. It really helped with all that. And so, it became part of my kind of daily management routine post that. And it's kind of come and gone over the years, but and now with the products getting much more interesting and much better, it's been fun to kind of experiment with some of this stuff and, the different cannabinoids, the different form factors. I now have all sorts of creams and everything I use for my knees because I've run far too many marathons and Ironman, and at my age, my knees are kind of shot. So I'm always kind of dealing with, joint pains and things like that. So it's just fascinating.
That's the benefit of being on both of us on this side of the business, because I have people that send me products nonstop, and I use them all. Them all. And I do the same thing before my runs or rides. I lather my body, my calves up, my knees up, my elbows, my wrists. And, and it's amazing on what this plant can do. And all these new these companies are popping up. Let me back up one.
Yeah.
College in Montreal. So are you Canadian, French Canadian, or no?
No, I'm U.S. citizen. So I grew up in Minnesota. Ended up there for school. So I needed architecture, engineering, and snow.
Yeah.
And when you look at those things and you start looking at universities, it was a very, very limited set. And Montreal was actually south from where I lived in Minnesota.
Oh wow.
So because of the way the geography works. And then I moved down to New York after that.
A little geography history there. Yeah. And then secondly, I've witnessed, a friend of mine is a surgeon here in California. And back in 2002, we were up in Tahoe for 4th of July. And I said, I would love to join you for surgery. He goes, you're into that? I said, I love that stuff. He said, meet me. And so I went to the hospital on that Tuesday, scrubbed up, did the whole thing.
Yeah.
Body's there. So did you go anterior or posterior?
We did, and we went in through the front. They did most of it through the abdomen, and then they went in the side. So I've got cages between the spines, and then I have rods and pins through the sides. So minimally invasive. Yeah,
I sat there, body, head, anesthesiologist, the doctor, myself, and another doctor on that side, and I was right here, and they literally opened the body up, and my first breath was skin. And he goes, don't inhale. I go, don't pass out, don't pass out, don't pass out. But I was able to see, I was right there. Yeah. I mean, I was, and I don't know if you can do that nowadays, and he was one of the doctors when Christopher Reeves had his accident. He was teaching overseas in Italy, and so they reached out to him, but it's an impressive. So did you have the titanium cages that they put in there?
Yeah, I've got 2 titanium cages between L4, L5, and S1, and then I've got rods and pins in the back.
But yours is 12 hours.
Yeah, just because we had some other complications. I'm on an anticoagulant for some other things, so we had a bunch of things we had to do a little differently. Yeah. So it was a big deal.
It is a big deal. Anyway,
it went very well. I mean, I must say the doctor was great.
So to hear you say that, I was like, oh my gosh, that brings back memories. So yeah, like you, my brain never stops as well. So cannabis, and it worked with you, Pam, because a lot of patients that I work with, including Corinne, it didn't work with her. I work with a lot of pain patients. Another woman who's been on our show, Claudia Morandi. She said, John, I've tried all these things and unfortunately it didn't work. And that was one thing that Corinne said, how come it doesn't work for pain? And again, cannabis is not a one size fits all. I'm glad it worked for you because like you said, it helped with that appetite, nausea.
Yeah. Also all those things. Mood. I do think there's a slight difference I realized between pain alleviation and pain management.
Okay.
So I certainly had pain. Like it didn't make the pain go away, but it just allowed me to deal with the pain much more effectively and productively. I'm a big meditator as well. So I think the combination of meditation and the cannabis allowed me to kind of, tolerate, manage the pain. So I didn't have to use the opiates because I found that the opiates just numbed me. Yeah. I mean, physically and mentally. And I didn't want to do that. So,
and it's constipated. I mean, that's the thing that a lot of patients do. It's like, I'm constipated, and especially if you're going through chemoradiation on top of everything, and they make that pill. Remember the commercials that were about, 5, 6, 7 years ago for opioid induced constipation? Here's a pill for you. And it's like, okay, take these, but if you get backed up, take this pill, and that pill doesn't work. Upon pills. Take this pill and take this pill. And so, so, I mean, we see, health and wellness sounds like the same thing has been in your lifestyle as well, and keeping our body balanced. I don't know how old are you, but I'm 53 and I feel like I still look out my 20-year-old eyes.
Yeah, you got me by 3 years, but yeah.
Okay, good. So 50s are great. 50s are great. And we're still able to do this. And the good thing, we still have our hair looks, and you have some great hair, but also touching toes. I can still touch toes. That's the one thing. Or see my toes.
Yeah.
And everything else in between all the way down there too. So, so you talked about, you have everything you've done. Congrats on selling your company, being an architect. I mean, so you have a wide variety on your resume. Yeah. What made you get into the cannabis industry? Was this just something from personal experience, or just seeing opportunity?
It was both. I mean, I certainly sort of having the experience I had with cannabis kind of opened my eyes to really the power of the plant and where it could be applied, and that just was fascinating. I mean, just from a someone who's been an entrepreneur for a long time and always kind of looking for new kind of innovative trends and what's going on in the world, I certainly saw that, hey, I think there's something here, right? Something is going to happen with cannabis in terms of how we embrace it as a culture, as a plant, as a medicine. And so that was certainly interesting. The work that I do as an entrepreneur and as a coach is essentially helping, companies have a huge opportunity to grow, figure out how to do that, right? Like I joke, it's like I help keep the wheels on the cart. Yeah, right? Like we can go 80 miles an hour, but like your cart might fall apart when we hit 40. Well, I'm there to help figure out how to keep the wheels on the cart. And just seeing where the cannabis industry was going, it's like, wow, there's going to be a lot of very high pressure, high pace growth that could definitely stress a lot of companies. And so doing what I do is just a perfect opportunity for strategic coaching, basically helping CEOs, leadership teams really figure out what their strategy was going to be. How do they execute on that? How do they level up their leadership skills? How do we find the right people, get talent involved, design the right organization? So, as an industry, it was a great spot for me as a coach. And quite honestly, the other thing I realized is most coaches like me kind of wouldn't touch cannabis with a 10-foot pole. right? It was just, there's still enough stigma around cannabis that from the sort of traditional business world, there's some hesitation of getting involved. And I, being an entrepreneur, maybe a little younger, certainly open to the idea, as an architect, a little bit more on the creative side, right? So very open to the idea of getting involved in cannabis. And I saw, just a great opportunity to apply what I do to an area that very much needed it. And, and then honestly, I can function in the world, right? Like I can function in cannabis. And the fact is cannabis is still, it's a little hairy at times. You've got a confluence of cultures, a confluence of kind of people and experiences and capabilities. And being able to how kind of navigate that and deal with that, I realized I could operate effectively in the world and bring what I do to the cannabis culture in a way that they were able to kind of understand and accept and embrace and leverage that.
I when we started this journey, like you, I'm thinking, how do I share this with my family? One, but also two, old work colleagues, because of stigma. And I remember for the first, 8-9 months, we would do press release and they would just say John. I wouldn't say John Malanca. And I had a lot of colleagues in this industry got really upset with me. Like, how, what are you doing? I said, listen, this wasn't my background. And I still have family members and old colleagues, because back 2010, 2011, it's not how it is now. Nowadays, they're talking about it, and, the seniors are talking about it at church and the bridge clubs and garden clubs. It's, I'm talking about my mom. I mean, it just blows me away that something like that was the one thing. And so you bringing your expertise and bringing that stigma down, people said to Corinne and I, you guys are good ambassadors for this industry, showing that, and I feel that the same way thing with you, with your background of being the way you are. And I think when you're an athlete as well as entrepreneur, you have, I would say type A personality. Are you? Yeah.
I can be when I need to be, but yes. Yeah. So, I think that's very much part of it. I mean, I think I was reasonably fortunate that, so I think I'm the only, I'm certainly the only person in my family without a PhD, and everyone else is medical, MDs, RNs.
Okay.
And so on one hand, I think there was a fairly sort of scientific kind of focused on, is this really medicine kind of thing. On the other hand, a fairly open mind of like, hey, look, if this stuff works, let's figure it out. I mean, the cultural side of it, I guess I never really had too much, stigma immediately within my family around, at least not that I can remember offhand. But it's certainly in the beginning, it was a little like, you're getting into cannabis. And now it's like, ooh, you're getting into cannabis. Right. So, I used to joke, like, used to be, everyone would step away from me at the parties when I talked about it. And now everyone wants a job.
Same. I mean, we would exhibit at pharmacy conferences, not pharmaceutical, but with pharmacists. Yeah. And the first year, people would walk by our booth and go, okay, I'm not looking. And then the second year, like, okay, I'll come over here and see what they're up to. Year 3, year 4, year 5, everyone's around our booth. Good to see you guys. How can we get involved? What's going on? And so, again, it's just bringing the stigma down, the talk. I mean, years ago, you wouldn't, dear friend of mine, the Hydes, Mike and Callie Hyde, their son is Cash Hyde. And Cash was the very first and legal medical cannabis, first legal medical cannabis patient in the United States. And he was the pioneer, but no one wanted to touch it with his 10-foot pole, meaning Good Morning America, Today Show, Dr. Oz. And they would talk to him, hey, Bruce, do you want to be on the show with you? Yeah. And then say, sorry, we can't do it. The higher ups would say something. And now, I mean, it's just to show you where that is to where we are today, or that we're then to today. I mean, in all the parts of this industry, the stigma is down, and people are turning to this that have as a medicine. And so, can you talk to that? What you're doing, what you're seeing in the industry, because what you're doing with helping so many businesses. There's some great ideas, and they have a lot of money, but they're not keeping the wheels on the bus. And I've seen that because, like you, I speak with companies on a daily basis that are wanting to jump in here to help have the right mindset. But what are they missing? Is it a goal? I mean, a map?
Well, so I think the challenge, I mean, there's a lot of challenges. I mean, there are obviously just general challenges in cannabis, but I think one of the things when it comes to the medical side is is the kind of when adult use programs come into the market, right? So you've got a state that's established a fairly good medical program, and then an adult use program comes in, and the two big problems are access to products, right? Like the product tends to go towards adult use, and so there can be a problem finding sort of inventory quantities of good product, and honestly product development, right? Like the area starts to shift towards adult use, right? And away from the therapeutic focus kind of products. And so I think a lot of the interesting companies that I've seen on the medical side have made the decision, say, hey, look, we're just going to focus on medical, and we're going to start looking at really what are the, everything from the dosing to the cannabinoids to the terpene profiles, like really focusing on, for a medical use, what do we really need to create in terms of products? Everything from form factors, packaging, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's one interesting trend right now in the industry, is how the dynamic between adult use and the medical programs end up impacting the product development side of things. And so one of the things I'm always looking for are folks that are trying to really innovate on the medical side, right? Because I think it gets kind of overwhelmed by adult use.
So it's your company, you're a nationwide company.
Well, so I'm a coach. I work with groups all over the U.S. and actually in Canada. Everything from testing labs to packaging companies to cultivators to testing labs, like various parts of the chain. Yeah. And what I'm looking for, all of those things, where are the growth opportunities, and I work with them to figure out the strategy. Cool. But the medical side is certainly an area that I think is sort of underdeveloped right now, or I think there's a dearth of good companies focused on medical products.
See, and that's what we've been since day one. And I remember people, I won't name names, but there was I guess editor for a very popular magazine wrote us, and I received my email. This is back in 2011. I said, "Oh my God, they found us and we're brand new." And he said, "It will never go medical. It will never go medical." And I'm thinking, listen, I have nothing against the recreational, but we're fighting for people like my father-in-law who had 2 weeks to live. Yep. 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, not 20 years. And so just like in the restaurant business, you have your early birds, the blue hairs who want to come in at 5 and be out by 5:27. And then the people, the other group that comes in. So I said, that's who we're fighting for. And he wrote back, "I apologize. It'll never go medical." Well, literally, no, they changed their name. The medical cups, I'll leave it like that, and medical magazine. But California being legal since 1996 is medical. In 2016, it came up to become adult use. Yep. And a lot of people in the industry, I voted no on it. Mm-hmm. Corinne, my wife, she voted yes on it. And the reason I voted was because we were so medical that I had seen what it's done to Colorado, Washington State, Oregon, and the medical market came in and really pushed out the recreational state.
The adult use, came in, medical.
And so a lot of doctors we work with had to close their offices because now they're going, I don't need to go see Bruce anymore. I can just go right down to the dispensary. Mm-hmm. And talking to patients now, right after that, I said, "How did you vote?" And they said, we made a mistake. We felt like we were, at least in California, it was the kind of a bait and switch type of thing. And right now, 2021, this is 2016, there's still, what do we go? What do we do? What do we listen to?
Yeah, it's for me, they're just two different industries.
Yeah.
Right? You've got one, which is really looking at,
money.
A patient model. Yeah. So certainly one, well, look, I think at the end of the day, everything is money, right? Like I'm not going to, pretend that, there's not profit motive in either side.
I would love to have the duffel bags of cash, which all the media, points on to about the recreational. And there's nothing wrong with the recreational side. That's not what I was getting at.
It's they're different industries. I think the problem comes is when they're the kind of confluence of them from a customer point of view and from a production point of view. Yeah. And when you get these dispensaries that you have dispensaries that are clearly adult use focused, and you have some dispensaries that are clearly looking at, more patient focused.
Do you think the product, let me get your insight on this. Do you think the products are identical and one's just higher taxed than the other, or are they separate products? Because I have this talk quite a bit.
I guess I would say from a strategy point of view, they are different strategies. I mean, the underlying formulations could be very, very similar. Although I think there's still, I think there's one of the challenges has been so much of the formulation strategy has been on the adult use side and not on the medical side, that you have a dearth of good quality medical products designed to be used for medical applications. So you end up with, from even going into a medical dispensary, you end up having to kind of use adult use products and not really having the right, underlying formulations, I find at times for patients. Also purely from a branding point of view. I mean, the packaging, the form factors, things like that, clearly, the weight has been on the adult use side. So I'd love to see more innovation in terms of formulations and in terms of product, formats, packaging, and stuff like that are really geared towards the medical side. But it's a profit motive force, right? Like where can companies make money? Yeah, I mean, the adult use is there.
And I appreciate your take on that, and as well, because I always look at it that the products are the same. Because people will say, well, let's go with this one. I want medical, not the recreational. So a lot of patients and consumers' mindset is CBD's medical, THC's recreational, which, and then you say every cannabinoid plays a part in bringing your body back to homeostasis balance. And then the tax portion. And so I look at it as you can still have access to medical grade products in the recreational at 21 and over, but the tax is different. And are you seeing that as well? Or are you seeing others? Because you're working with a lot of companies that are.
Yes, I'm working with lots of different markets. I mean, generally, yes. I mean, they're taxing, or I don't know how you say it. They're providing a discount on the tax for medical use. In part because it's it's sort of a vice tax, right? Yeah. Like if you're adult use, like, okay, we're going to tax it higher because this is kind of a luxury. It's not medical necessity. I think that's generally been the market or the kind of policy logic behind the things. But it creates this gray market, right? It creates a situation. And the fact is a lot of people are using or coming in through the kind of the adult use side to self-medicate. Right. So, I mean, just because, someone isn't going to a medical dispensary or using a medical card or paying the medical tax doesn't mean they're not using it for medicinal purposes. It's just a question of like, what is the avenue they have gone down and what's the best road for them in terms of actually acquiring the products that they need.
Yeah. Speaking about products, can you share anything that you're working on right now, or is it kind of hush hush until it makes it to market?
Well, so most of the groups that I work with, it's all hush hush until they, until they launch things. But I mean, I guess in general, the things that I've been interested in terms of trends, certainly some of these more interesting formulations. I mean, as you mentioned, we're learning more and more about all the different cannabinoids and the terpenes and the flavonoids and everything that are in these in the plant that we can extract. So that's really interesting to see how we're kind of understanding not only how these individual molecules work, but also in combinations, how they create different effects. Some really interesting stuff of people now, using other plant, products, plant medicines to incorporate into this, right? So not just cannabis, but, other traditional plant medicines, with various kind of properties and capabilities and putting them into kind of formulations where cannabis is just one of many things they're putting into stuff. The other one is interesting is there's a couple of groups that are developing or extracting terpenes from non-cannabis plants, right? So like oranges and things like that. I mean, these, terpenes come from all sorts of things. I mean, cannabis is an offshoot of the hop plant, and that has gone off to, there's lots of different ways you can get terpenes out of the hop families, but all fruits, there's lots of different ways you can get these terpenes. So people are extracting terpenes for the purpose of creating formulations such that you don't run amok of the cannabis laws, right? So you can still create a terpene blend with non-cannabis plants so that you can actually, and now you have no restrictions. I mean, you can ship it internationally as it's just a fruit product.
Yeah.
But they're kind of learning from the cannabis side to figure out how can we get these terpenes and create some of these profiles and create.
And
some
are
of these
they in
specs.
oils? Because I've been to conferences before the COVID hit, and you go to this table and it's like, oh my gosh. And so for our audience too, and I know I'm a broken record on this, but we've all smelt terpenes, and it's, it brings you back to a place. For me, it's stop and smell the roses. Roses always remind me of my grandmother. And so you believe me, I don't care where we are, Bruce and I, you and I, walking down the street, if I see a rose, I'll stop and smell it. And it brings me back that as well as lavender, and the same thing, and it's calming. And so each of these terpenes that are in the cannabis plant and other I guess, plant-based or fruit, they can bring
they have psychological effects, and they have. I mean, people are really finding some interesting effects. Medical effects, right? People are, it will affect the body in different ways, and certainly this combination. I think the one thing we've learned on the cannabis world, from a formulation point of view, is extracting these individual molecules out. Say, okay, well, here's 100% pure THC. Just does not have the same effect as a full spectrum or a broad spectrum profile, which these things work in combination. I think it's one thing that I've appreciated, having done interviews with lots of these folks now. The challenge we have in cannabis from the medical side, where you have a medical industry, which is fundamentally based on identifying individual molecules, researching them, testing them, putting them into trials in very particular ways and in very isolated, controlled environment to be able to evaluate and prove efficacy and be able to actually put these to market. Cannabis is not that. I mean, cannabis is a plant medicine. It comes as a whole broad spectrum of molecules and cannabinoids, and trying to pull them out individually and test them like we would a Tylenol it doesn't work. And so there's been a lot of friction, a lot of challenges from, the research in the pharmaceutical world. Like, how do we do this? How do we validate, cannabis as an effective drug in these different, formulations for these different conditions in this different environment? I think it's probably one of the bigger challenges in cannabis.
Are you seeing that a lot of these companies are having to do this out of country, out of the U.S., and go overseas or up to Canada to have these tests? And unfortunately, you're seeing this.
Well, they have to do that, but most of that has been because we can't do the research, right? Because it's still federally illegal. We can't actually run the tests the same way we would run them. Right. I think the big shift that I've seen, or the interesting one, is sort of moving away from kind of single molecule clinical trial kind of model to much more of anecdotal, broad spectrum or broad scale, or broad studies, anecdotal studies of cannabis use in broad populations. So rather than saying, okay, we're going to take 100 people and we're going to 50 this and 50 this, and we're going to randomize it and we're going to double blind it and all this stuff. It's like, look, the fact is people are using cannabis at very large volumes for very periods of time. And if we can collect the right data and do the regression analysis to be able to say, well, hey, look, here's a whole bunch of people in this situation with these genetics, with this condition. Let's look and see how, different cannabis products are affecting them, positive and negative in different ways. Like there is ability to pull out legitimate research or legitimate conclusions from some of that stuff, but it's a whole different approach to trials and being able to conduct research around this. And we're just not set up as an industry to do that, or certainly pharmaceutical is not set up to do that. And so a lot of this has been innovating on how do we collect this data, how do we analyze this data, and how do we validate using this different kind of data approach? How do we validate this from a effectiveness point of view?
Let me back up to terpenes really quick. Have you ever spoken to Dr. Susan Trapp? She's out of Colorado.
No, I haven't.
A terpene specialist. And, she's been on the show, and I've worked a couple of things. I would like to put you guys in touch, because I think if you're working with a lot of terpenes, she would be a nice asset as well. Yeah. So companies that are coming in here, what can you share because a lot of everyone has a story. I have a story, you have a story, and how it kind of led you into this. And a lot of the patients we work with, and we do Stories of Hope on a regular basis here, United Patients Group. And with those stories of hope, what they went through, they started a company. And so for our listeners, how can you help? What would you do? Like from A to Z starting point of, Bruce, I need help. I don't have any wheels on the bus, and I need at least to get one wheeler and a spare tire on there too. And so, do you work? And I know you're working with multi-million-dollar companies.
Yeah, so the challenges are different. If you look at kind of as a company grows, right, from sort of, I've got an idea, raising money, founded a company, first product, getting to market, getting traction, getting profitable, scaling the business, like each step has its own set of challenges. So, generally I'm working with companies that they've got traction, right? They've got a product, they've got customers, they're making money. They're profitable at some level. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just like, we're able to generate revenues. We just can't figure out how to make it profitable at the scale. And we want to figure out how to really scale this thing up. We want to get to several $100 million in revenue. And I work with them around that. I would say the core of what I do is around strategy, meaning every successful, I would say, in order to be a successful scaling company, you really need to identify who is your core customer, right? Who do you really serve? Who do you really focus on? Yeah. What is the product or service that you provide them? Meaning, like, what do you do for them, right? If you're trying to sell everything to everyone, you're not going to get very far, right? You just cannot focus. You don't have time, money, and energy to try to do that. And everyone else in the world is trying to do that too. So you're not going to differentiate yourself. If you can really hone in, who am I trying to serve? What is the problem I'm solving for them? And what is my solution? If you can really hone that, that's where you can start to really focus on scaling. So everyone I work with, it's a lot of this is winnowing this down, like trimming out all the things you could do to the handful of things you really should do to be able to grow and scale. And that's going to be based on really what are your unique capabilities, what your passions are at, right? There's a whole kind of confluence of things that come together to figure that out. But yeah, it's that defining the focus. And then figuring out, once I have this focus, how am I going to go to market? And then what do I need to build around me in terms of operations, in terms of talent, in terms of, leadership teams, in terms of expertise? I would say one of the big challenges in cannabis these days is even for companies that have a great strategy and there's a great market opportunity, if you need to get to a couple hundred people in your organization to be able to scale it, it's tough to find good people that can work in cannabis. And so there's certainly not enough people in cannabis right now. And so you're pivoting people from other industries, and that doesn't always go so well, right? Like I certainly run into a lot of cases where you've got this great, pharmaceutical executive, 30 years in pharmaceutical, is going to come over to cannabis, and then they crash and burn in 6 months because it's a different industry, and
it's a totally different industry,
and they can't make the change, right? And other people can, but that's one of the big things. But so I work with them to really figure out strategy, and then how do we really define the scaling process? What are the goals? What are the targets? How do we build out a team to achieve that?
But just to mirror what you said, I tell people all the time, this is, and I've done, like you, quite a few things in my life, and I'm thinking this is one of the craziest industries. I remember when Corinne and I first started, I would say, you see this, my forehead? Yeah. You see that, Bruce? She goes, no. I go, that's for me banging my head against the wall of frustration. And these were the business professionals in this industry. And I've seen a lot of people come and go in this wave. I think there's a lot of opportunity in this industry, but it's not a get quick rich industry. And
I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions.
I'm going to get in the cannabis industry. I have dirt, I have a seed, I have water, and I'm a multimillionaire right now. And it's like, it's not. And I think if you need to come in with some compassion in your heart as well, if you are coming in to say, I'm on the medical side, I want to help people, in which, I've seen a lot of great companies, and I've seen companies come in that have a great idea, great product, and they're no longer here. And I don't know if it's capital, or they burnt out, or just business in general. I mean, it happens at your local ice cream store, your pizza joint, or whatever. So what can you share with our audience? I want to spotlight what you're doing and how people can find you. What are the core things that you can do for companies coming in? I know you shared kind of a little cliff note there, but how do they start with you? So if I came on, Bruce, I'd like to start, and I do receive your emails as well.
Yeah.
And so what can you share with our audience?
Yeah, well, so I always push people to the podcast, right? So my podcast has really great interviews from all sorts of people in the industry. Their stories of just getting into the industry, struggling in the industry, being successful in the industry. So there's some great content there. I always suggest if people want to learn more about cannabis, listen to some of that stuff. In terms of the work that I do, I mean, I'm a strategic coach, right? So my job is helping clarify those issues of who is my core customer? How are we going to go to market? What are the differentiators? How do we build out core capabilities? I have a series of strategy sessions that I run, privately for companies when they want to go through the strategy process. I'm happy to send people, outlines of how my strategy stack and how we get to some of those answers. I run a lot of workshops, helping people kind of answer various pieces of that. I run a series of mastermind programs. So for folks that are in the industry and want to really have a confidential safe place to come and bring their business challenges, their struggles, their questions. Hey, how do I do X? I host mastermind meetings where we get together monthly, and those folks have a chance to share experiences. I coach, we bring in content, really help bring in planning, bring in strategy, bring in accountability so they can really get focused on growing and scaling. And yeah, I mean, the medical side, it's, there's been a lot of folks coming in with great intention and noble causes and, which are, incredibly important. But the thing is, you also have to run a successful business, right? Like unless you're going to get funded continuously somehow from some outside source, like you've got to figure out how to make money. And so I think one of the things that I love doing is helping people that are super passionate and have really noble causes and are mission driven also figure out how to make sure that it's going to be a sustainable, viable business model. Because at the end of the day, that if you really want to have impact, if you really want to bring your product, your service to market and impact as many people as possible, you have to build a sustainable, scalable model around it, right? There's no point in doing it, or it's really tough to do if you require funding at every stage.
Being in this industry for 11 years, I think we've seen it all. I've seen a lot of companies come in, even in our company, the same thing of growing pains, what worked, what didn't work, keep on, pull your bootstraps back up and keep going. That was one thing that I still have in my head every day with Corinne is act like you're in the middle of mud or in the trenches, mud, heavy sack on, pouring rain, wind blowing, and you're just one step at a time and look forward, just constantly go and forget about all this other hoopla on their side as well. Well, you mentioned, let me go with your mastermind course, and you're saying sharing ideas. Is it a one-on-one sharing ideas, or are you in a group like a round table?
So the way I do it is I put together groups of about 6 to 8 CEOs, and I do it by industry. So all these folks are in cannabis. I make sure there's no direct competitive conflicts. So either geographically spread, or you're working on different parts of the growth chain. But the point is to bring together folks that are going through this, similar struggles, right? Like, trying to figure out how to get this business running, growing the business, finding the right people, figuring out strategy. You can often learn a lot from other folks that either are going through the same thing or just went through that or are going through that in 6 months. And so I create a container, right? A space where we can get together and share those ideas. I what we call hot seat, right? So I get people to go like, okay, like what is the real challenge? And we dig into it. We push for root causes. We get super vulnerable at times.
I was going to say, do people feel comfortable sharing?
We've had people cry. We've had people like, oh yeah, absolutely. Like, because look, at the end of the day, it's challenging, right? As an entrepreneur, like most of the stuff that you're struggling with are stuff that's in your head, right? And if you don't have a place to be able to kind of work that stuff out and the nice thing is that group, no one has a dog in your fight. Right. Yeah. Like we're just there to love you and like help you be successful. Right. Like we're not an investor. We're not a spouse. We're not an employee. We're not a business partner. We're not a regulator, like whatever. We're just there to help you be successful, but we can give you honest, feedback around what we see and the patterns you're in and your thinking patterns. And we can help call some of that stuff out. And the whole point is to get more options, more perspective on the table so you can make better decisions that are going to help you scale faster. So that's the container we create in the program. And then I bring in coaching tools and growth tools, and we do strategy and we have goal setting and stuff like that. But fundamentally is to create that space where you can really share deeply with other folks that are in the similar situations.
So you have two things. One is your one-on-one, but also your mastermind. And so the mastermind, is it a 6-week course or?
So I do that. We do that sort of in perpetuity. I usually do we have a 1-year curriculum, and then people stay in it, and we keep that group going. And because you end up creating, you get to know these people.
Yeah.
Like you know them deeply and they know you deeply. And that's a really valuable thing when you're going through different phases of the process.
Fantastic. So how do people find you?
So eckfeldt.com, ECKFELDT.com is my main website. It has all my coaching information. Thinkingoutsidethebud.com is the podcast. And my email is just bruce@eckfeldt.com. You could always reach out and I'll put you in touch with whatever piece of content is most applicable to your situation.
And are you working on anything right now that you want to highlight when we get out to our audience?
Depending on, we're putting together a really interesting symposium on cultivation in June. And we're bringing together some of the most interesting cultivators, people in ag science, people in research, people that have been cultivating cannabis for 30, 40 years, and really focusing on the science of cultivation. So we're putting together that program that's going to be in June. It's a one-day symposium. And we're doing a new mastermind group the end of next month. So we're recruiting for that. What else we've got going on? It's just the world is so busy right now. Podcast episodes all over the time.
No kidding.
Never
ending, but well, cool. Have a lot to share with you offline. I'd like to introduce you some people as well and further discuss, see what we can do together as well. But Bruce, I thank you so much for jumping on. I have to ask you, I love that background. Tell me it's not a green screen. Is it real?
No, that's real. That's all.
Oh, good. I love it. Love the colors. Looks perfect there too. So anyway, Bruce Eckfeldt. And they can find you Eckfeldt, ECKFELDT.com, right? And
you got it.
I thank you. And then let me share how can they find your podcast as well?
Yeah, so thinkingoutsidethebud.com is you just search for that and you'll find it.
And it's on all the
platforms. There's a website. We'll push you to whatever platform you want. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce, I appreciate you being on and doing what you're doing in the industry, and I look forward to doing more with you in the future as well. And have a blessed day. And everyone, hope you enjoyed this. I certainly did. John Malanca is the United Patients Group. Be informed and be well, and we'll see you again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.